Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and good night, and welcome to the 7th bonus, the last Merge Weekly Workshop with Infura. So excited to have you here today for this session, which we are calling Quality Assurance and the Merge. I'm Tom Hay. I'm a Senior Product Manager at Infura, and I'll be hosting the session today. We have an agenda that is going to very quickly fill up our time. So because we're going to cover a lot of ground, we want to make sure that we leave plenty of time for questions. So we're going to jump right into it today, and we're going to try and knock all the housekeeping out of the way first. So to introduce our stellar group of presenters that we have here today, I have my colleagues Darina, Gagan, and Tyreek. They may be familiar to you. They have been on this journey with us for the past 7 weeks, hosting sessions, answering questions, jumping in the chat. They are part of a larger team working on the merge for Infura and for Consensus. And our special guest today is Jackie Robinson, the Quality Assurance Manager for Infura, who's joining us, who's also been working on the merge, has been helping out a ton. And so now Jackie is joining us for this bonus session. We're super happy to have her today. Fill out the survey. It should go live. It always goes live like at the hour when we start. So if it takes a second for it to turn on, don't you worry, but click that green button, fill out the community survey. At this point, we're not doing any more of these workshops, but we are going to use any of the data from this survey to asynchronously answer your questions and create new materials as we go into the merge and also into the post-merge period. So any insights you give us is going to be helpful for us creating the materials that we believe will best suit your needs. You can also always join our community calls. We actually just had a community call immediately preceding this session, and our next one will be at the end of September. So in the Ask a Question section, there might be some questions that we say, hey, that was actually a great question for the community call, because we're focused on the merge. We're not going to answer it entirely. We'll just point you to some specific resources, but we might ask you to join the next community call instead to get that question answered. So we're going to focus on questions dealing with the merge, since this is our last time that we have together, and we want to make sure that we take advantage of it, but feel free to ask your questions. We also are going to have this call recorded. It's being recorded right now, and you can view the recording at this link. Finally, immediately after this call, I'm going to push a post on a blog on blog.infura.io that is literally a recap of everything that we talked about for the past 7 weeks, includes links to all these recordings. So it will go live right after this, blog.infura.io. It will be the Infura Developer's Guide to the Merge. It covers everything from solo staking, which we talked about. We talked about staking as a service. We talked about dApp developer considerations. We talked about MEV. All those resources that we shared, we have compiled into one single mega blog. I think it's 3,000 words. So you will have that information. We're also going to share links with you today. We hope that is super useful. All right. Let's just do background and timeline like we always do, because we want to just give the context of where we're at. In fact, that was the name of our first session, where we're at, where we're going. Okay, mainnet merge. We have that's set at the total terminal difficulty. I believe it's 5.875 septillion. It's trending towards September 15th, 2022, based off of the current hash rate and how that's trending. The Bellatrix releases have been made. You might see some other ones being released if there's anything that's caught. So it follow along with the various client teams. If you're going to put that in place, they'll let you know, hey, you need to update by this date, update your staking setup if you're doing that. If you're if you're not staking but you're just running software to support an Ethereum node, they'll let you know that one as well. So those releases have happened. They are happening and they are being updated. So then that puts us in this box, we are, mid-September, we are merging. That is super exciting. That is our moon landing moment. We are pumped for it. And based off of your feedback, a big thing that came up is like, well, what you talked a lot about solo stakers, what we need to do. You talked about dApp developers, what we needed to do. But like, can you tell us what Infura has been doing to prepare for the merge? We gave hints of that. We talked about different things. And because we wanted to make sure that we responded to your feedback, we are now going to bring Jackie Robinson on stage to talk about the QA that we are doing at Infura for the merge. So Jackie, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so excited to have you. And the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I'm glad I can, just share what happens behind the scenes on the Infura team when it comes to supporting the engineering team with any preparation work they're doing. So, from a quality assurance perspective, we tend to want to represent the end users, the customers, and our main priority is making sure that everyone who uses Infura has a really positive, stable, reliable experience, because we have no idea, the scope of the dApps that are plugged in with Infura, all the different projects and businesses that rely on us. And again, for the developers, that's mostly, providing a stable experience when they're interacting with the Ethereum blockchain. And so that means we want to make sure that people can continue to trust us to run their nodes for them on their behalf. And yeah, so that you can just focus on API consumption. Next slide. So a lot of the testing has involved a lot of meticulous and time-consuming work on adding test coverage that will help us measure API availability. So that's using the JSON RPC, HTTPS methods, and WebSocket methods, and making sure that the data returned back from our nodes is correct and consistent. And also a lot of monitoring, especially because we have so many microservices and they all interact with our nodes in different ways. Just making sure that whenever we're doing changes for, like when Sepolia and Gurley merge activity happened, a lot of it involved monitoring for errors, like what happens now when reorgs happen. Is it like how are our microservices handling that? And a lot of it is looking at our extensive test, like automated test suite results. And it's a team effort. But the overall goal is just verifying that our services do what they're supposed to do before and after the merge, and hopefully people don't notice any change at all. That's the ideal plan. Next slide. So here, hopefully this isn't blurry for people. So I put down here a list of about 60 ETH API methods. And the reason I put them all down here is to kind of demonstrate that we want to that we're completely thorough in making sure we have test coverage for all of the supported ETH JSON RPC methods with all the most popular and useful permutations. Like we know, depending on the parameters users use with these methods, like they vary a lot in terms of complexity. So we have automated test coverage for all of these, and we have more too. These are just for mainnet, but we also have them for the other networks that we support, like Polygon, for instance. I know has additional ones. And part of the QA work that we've been doing is basically testing existing pre-merge functionality and also adding test coverage for post-merge changes. So having tests that use parameters like safe and finalized, and testing how that works with our different microservices. That's what we've been doing a lot of. Next slide. Yes, and then also testing on, Gurley for sure, super important, and also Sepolia. It's been something that, a significant amount of developers do appreciate us supporting Sepolia just to have that test net for people to use. And so here I just included a faucet URL for people to use for testing some API methods. And then another fun tool that we've been using is this open source technology by the team at Kurtosis. I've linked here a page that people can use to get started. It seems to be something that other Node as a service providers also use as well to test their microservices on how they're predicting things will behave post merge. And this tool, it kind of helps users simulate reorgs, and it helps people hook in to testnet and hook into their existing microservices to simulate reorgs, which is really useful. So I think I went through that faster than I thought. But yeah, I'm super open to questions that people might have later on when the time comes up.
Great. Thank you for that, Jackie. And we will come back and answer questions that come up and actually delve into some of these topics in depth. So what we'll now do is just go over a brief wrap up of the series, share some resources, and then we have a lot of time for Q&A. So I'm already seeing some great questions come in, so we'll get to those. So here we are. We are at the end. We have gone through all of these topics in the prior weeks. We started back July 12th, and we have these all recorded now, including this one. This series will stay up. We will be, our goal as part of this workshop was to give you the information that you needed to know to feel prepared for the merge. And we covered a lot of different user profiles, everything from solo stakers, dApp developers and smart contract developers, those who are staking their ETH, those who were interested in sort of the protocol research side. We have really tried to answer all the questions that different Infura customers have had. So we are going to be publishing out, like I said, on blog.infura.io, a complete summary of everything that we've talked about, including links to the recordings, all the resources that we shared, basically all of the information that we've compiled over this time period in answering your questions. We've also created a frequently asked questions section based off of some of the recurring questions that's come up in this. So if you want to go back and reference anything that we talked about, if you don't want to go through and rewatch, I think at this point we're probably up to probably 9 to 10 hours of content, given how in-depth these sessions have gone. You can always read this blog, which will go up right after we close this session. It will be published live. You will see that blog update a bit, as there are certain other articles that go live that we're linking to and talking about. It will also link out to, we talked about we're supporting Gurley and Sepolia, and the Sepolia endpoints will be going live imminently. So once that announcement is made, we'll also link out to that information. But this has been a fantastic series in my opinion, for those who wanted to really get up to speed on what Infura is doing and preparing you as a user of Infura for the merge. So if there's anything you feel like we missed, now is a great time to fill out the survey and let us know, because we will produce written content to help fill those knowledge gaps that might still exist. And if there's someone that you're talking to and they weren't following the series and they haven't kept up on what's going on, I'd recommend, share with them these materials. We are sharing out materials that are both Infura specific, but also that are materials that are useful for the community whether or not they use Infura. And so, we really aimed for these sessions to be a way for people who were using Infura, but also who maybe weren't, to get up to speed and understand the impact of the merge. So let's now just quickly talk about the resources. Infura's blog, the consensus knowledge base, the state of staking series. These are all great places to just keep up to date what's going on with the merge. They will have information that is up to date to the day, sometimes to the hour, right? So that's a great spot. If you want up to the minute information, obviously Consensus's Twitter, Infura Twitter are great places to check out. We also want to re-highlight this series called My Journey to Becoming a Validator on Ethereum 2.0. There's a 5th part of the series that's coming out, how an individual staker can prepare for the merge. Once that's live, that will be included in the blog that we are releasing today. So it will be just a placeholder for now, but then we'll have that go live. We also talked about a lot of different tools. Some of those are made by our friends here at Consensus, the products MetaMask and Truffle. So we're just calling those out again. And then finally, we had some Ethereum Foundation and general information that was shared about how the merge impacts Ethereum's application layer, the Beacon Chain knowledge base. We'll come back to this, but this great thread on Reddit about interacting with proof of work chains. Saw some questions about that. The Ethereum Foundation website, the Mega Merge research list, and the Ethereum Launchpad. These are great resources, whether you're a dApp developer, whether you're a solo staker, whether you're someone who just holds ETH. Great resources for you. Fill out the survey. Fill out the survey. We'll use that information to create any written content, maybe some short videos, tweets to help you feel prepared. So with that, we have plenty of time. We have about 40 minutes for Q&A. The questions are coming in. We'll try and do like 30 minutes of Q&A, and then we'll reserve maybe the last 10 to 15 minutes for like our takeaways from this series, a little bit of wrap up. Okay, great question from Yashar. What should we do before and after the merge with our NFTs? Okay, this actually we directly answer in the blog. Because the blog is not published yet, I'm just gonna read from the Google Doc version of the blog that I actually have up in the background. The answer.
Nice.
What do I need to do if I have an NFT on Ethereum? NFT holders on Ethereum do not need to do anything to prepare for the merge. If you see any messaging about trading in your NFT to make sure that it works on ETH2, this is a scam. Do not follow it. We strongly recommend, and this goes to the second part of your question, Yasher, you do not try to game any proof of work forks by selling NFT that may be issued if miners are to create a short-lived fork of the Ethereum blockchain. There are major risks associated with doing so. Those are detailed in that Reddit thread that I talked about called the risks of interacting with prospective proof of work forks of Ethereum. We recommend that you stick with the Ethereum roadmap as articulated and only use your NFT on the merged chain, the proof of stake chain. Infura, full stop, will be supporting the Ethereum roadmap as articulated, which means we are going to proof of stake Ethereum at that total terminal difficulty that I mentioned before, that 5.875 septillion block difficulty. So because of that, you don't need to do anything with your NFTs. They'll just work on that proof of stake chain. We are going over to proof of stake. I'm just going to drop in here one more time again to the chat. This is the thread we're talking about the dangers of the dangers and risks of interacting with the prospective proof of work fork. And in Infura, we are at the merge. We are going to proof of stake. We are following the Ethereum roadmap. So I hope that answers your question. You can just use your NFTs with proof of stake, keep them on proof of stake, stay on the Ethereum roadmap as articulated. Thank you for that question, Really appreciate it. That was a great question. This is a great question. It is more for the community call, but I will say that, like, so we deprecated our public gateway service. There is a migration blog post up there. We'll track that down and drop it in there, Justin. But I would say next community call is definitely a good place for this question. So I'm going to kind of go to all the other merge related questions first, just because like we want to make sure those are done. So here we go. Yasher asked, what should we do with our funds? We'll go back to the blog again. What do I do if I hold ETH? You don't need to do anything to prepare for the merge. Once again, if you see any messaging about trading in your ETH for ETH 2.0, it's a scam. Don't follow it. Don't try to game any proof of work fork tokens that may be created if miners are to create a short-lived fork of the Ethereum blockchain. The same risks that I talked about that exist for NFTs exist for ETH. Stick with the Ethereum roadmap as articulated. That is the safest thing that you can do. Thank you for that question. All right. What will happen for Beacon ETH on the market? Okay, so I think when you're referring to Beacon ETH, you mean the ETH that was created that's being created as stakers, validators, create new blocks on the Beacon chain. And that ETH is going to not be able for release until the Shanghai fork, which is where you're able to actually, validate solo stakers or any sort of stakers will get access to that. So that is just the reward, the block reward ETH. That's not the MEV or unburnt fee tips. So that is that ETH is not yet unlocked, but it is being as Beacon, those that are participating in as validators on the Beacon chain, like they will once we do the Shanghai fork sometime after the merge, that will be available for them to use. So yeah, that is good. I don't know about anything related to, I can't speak at all about anything related to like Binance related issuance or any sort of like staking based ETH issuances. Basically any wrap tokens, I can't give you any insight on what happens to those, but I can tell you that ETH from the Beacon chain is going to be ETH that will be obviously part after the merge. That is, we're on one chain now. Great question. Great questions. Okay. Okay. Let's say we have a hard fork that will happen to assets that we have on layer 2. Oh, where did that one go? Let's say we have a hard fork that will happen to assets that we have on layer 2 on the proof of work chain. I don't completely understand this question, Pedram, so I'm going to try and answer it as I think the intent is. And I think you're saying like, what happens to your assets if there's a fork and you have assets on a layer 2, like Polygon or Arbitrum or Optimism or Palm, any layer 2 or sidechain? As long as you are staying with the proof of stake merge chain, those assets, right, will continue to exist, will be continue to work with the proof of stake chain. As we referenced in that article, the Reddit thread that talked about the risks of interacting with prospective proof of work, what you expose yourself to risk is if you use those assets from a layer 2 and bridge them to the proof of work chain. There become these risks that of like potential replay attacks because you had spent that token on the proof of work chain. I think that article does a great job of explaining all those risks. And so once again, our guidance would be like those L2 sidechain assets, they, just use them with Ethereum as the roadmap articulates. We are going to be, like I said, going to proof of stake Ethereum at that merge block difficulty. So we encourage everyone, stick to the roadmap. Don't try and game any sort of proof of work chain. That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. Another good question and Jackie just dropped in a great blog post is, what would be the merge impact on the Ethereum app layer? We also went over this last week in our 6th session, which is DApp developer considerations. Jackie, do you maybe want to talk a little bit about it? You did reference the safe and finalized head, but just like talk about why like that change that's happening to the spec, and why you've been and hence why you've been testing it.
Yeah, so I would say, like, what impact will it have? Hopefully not a big impact. Like, the idea is that all the JSON RPC methods that developers use for their DApp, like, so for that layer, they'll continue working. There are some new states that are now going to be used. For instance, safe will always be like one block before latest, and that's something to kind of help. Like, it'll be an improvement for developers to use. And then finalized, I think that's the one that there's still some ambiguity, but finalized in theory means that, like, if a state is finalized, there definitely won't be any reorgs after that block height for that block. But for the most part, for the application layer, the idea is there should not be a huge impact. And so I linked there a blog post from Tim Bako that explains what the impact of it is at that layer. So I'm hoping that helps answer some more lower level technical questions. But generally, yeah, like, there shouldn't be a big negative impact.
A big call out that we made last week was that for the vast majority of DApp developers, you should be able to proceed as you have been, and then just being aware of, these new parameters. Specifically, our Ethereum API is going to be supporting those parameters. Our testnets, that, they will eventually like have those parameters as well if they don't already. So being able to use that, like the safe head parameter, safe and finalize, like having access to that. But we did call out something that was a change, and it goes into detail in this. And last week we actually called out some additional resources at the EIP level, and the blog post that we're going to publish actually gets into even more detail because it's a little bit hard to explain live. But the idea of, if you're using opcode 0x44 for pseudo randomness, which currently is difficulty and will become the opcode prev randao, there are certain steps that you would need to take if you're going to use that going forward as a source of pseudo randomness. Now, there is backwards compatibility. There's like choices that were made to help make smart contracts that have already used that, like backwards compatible. But like, if you're going to use that opcode going forward, you're going to redeploy a smart contract, you're going to have a new smart contract, and you're trying to use that as a source of on-chain pseudo randomness, it's important to use that opcode appropriately. So we actually link out to the resources that talk to you about how to use that appropriately. But I will cut to the chase because you're here with us, and I don't want to say like, hey, you're gonna like, I'm not gonna make you wait for the blog, even though it's only 30 minutes away. I know that you've all been here, you've been joining us, and so I'm not gonna make you wait anymore. I will drop in those links right now as I look them up. But yeah, basically, you are able to you are able to still use that field, but you just have to be very, very aware to know this. So I'm going to copy that text and hopefully I can. Here is the supplant difficulty opcode with Prev Randau. So we'll just drop that into the chat so everyone can see that. This is the EIP. And then we have another article that just explains EIP that kind of just gets into that in the security consideration side. So hopefully that is like super useful for you. Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking that. Okay, there is. So we answered that one. We'll save that one for the end. Let's talk about this question. What is the Ethereum Classic situation after the merge? We actually, I think the answer is in here. Ethereum Classic is a fork of Ethereum that occurred in following the DAO hack back in 2016. I think we actually in our merge workshop. Let's just go back and look at the timeline because I think that contextualizes when the DAO fork was. So that was July 20th, 2016. And at the DAO fork, this hard fork, that's when the Ethereum Classic was, people might say maybe a different date, but like that has gone on and continued. And so the merge doesn't, I can't really speak to Ethereum Classic because we're on Ethereum, but the merge is not something that is, as far as I know, applying to Ethereum Classic. You would have to ask the Ethereum Classic team to get more information about that. So it's not something that we can give you any more insight than just to say like give you the context around like what Ethereum Classic is. Yep, is kind of answered there. We can't give you any answer about it. Good. Okay. So great, but good question. Thank you for asking that question. Okay. Another pretty interesting one. If the merge is delayed, what is the reason? There's no, right now we're on the path for the merge. And I would not know, what would at this point would delay the merge. So that is something that it's a good question. But once that TTD is set and the releases are happening, the merge is going to happen. So everyone right now is updating their various clients, whether they're using Hyperledger Besu, Teku, Geth, Lighthouse, Prism. They're updating those, and that TTD is now included. And at that TTD, that is when their clients will essentially do the merge of the execution layer and the consensus layer, and we'll get that new block structure that we showed last week and in some previous weeks. So good question right there. Survey should be open. So sorry that you're chomping at the bit, and that's great. So now that should be open. And when merge, they said merge will be 13th of September. Okay. So it's based on the difficulty. So when we say like September 15th, what we're actually looking at to give you that date is a specific site. That's why you're hearing people say this. And this site is one of a few predictor sites that look at the difficulty and the hash rate and tries to predict when the merge will happen. So I just dropped in that site. It's being referenced a lot. Tim Byko's referencing it, Vitalik. That's where we're coming up with the date on. But really, we're looking at it's hitting that TTD. So the merge happens on a date, and that like anything happens at a date and time, but the actual time the merge occurs is actually a block difficulty. So the 15th is just our trend, the trend line. So if you hear other dates, that just means that like some other group might be tracking that at a slightly different or trying to predict when it is. But really what we're looking for is that total terminal difficulty. So great question. That's why you might see differences in that date. Okay. This is a good one. Spicy question. Is it true that Ethereum will be centralized after the merge? And is there a chance of a 51% attack? Morteza just getting right into that. That's getting into a spicy question. Okay. So we talked about this really in the solo stakers sessions and in the staking as a service, but with the distribution of stakers, Ethereum actually becomes more decentralized with the merge because there's more participants in securing and creating blocks in the network. So so I would actually say that Ethereum becomes more decentralized after the merge. The barrier of entry for participation becomes less at this point to become, a solo staker or to participate in staking pools. So that actually should serve as a democratizing function in terms of participation. Is there a chance of a 51% attack is a great question, because I think the idea of is there a chance of any sort of attack? This is where the idea of probabilities, and when you talk about a 51% attack, we're now saying probabilities on percentages, which is always the most confusing thing. But basically, the point of one of the advantages of going to proof of stake is that likelihood of being able to actually engineer the 51% attack becomes that much more expensive. Gagan, I think you and I were talking about what this number was, so maybe you'll correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it is like billions and billions of ETH have to be like billions of US. What if we were saying like USD to ETH, but it's just like an incredible sum of ETH that has to be spent to engineer a 51% attack, and then the network could just decide to, participants say, we're not going to include that block, and that spend would happen and then just be completely wiped out. So I don't know if there's anything you want to add on that, sort of the dynamics of that attack vector and how it can, even if it happens, it could still be reverted.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. Basically, it's a super expensive attack to try to orchestrate, and it's not a guaranteed success. So somebody would have to borrow a lot of money and attempt to take over the network, and they may fail, in which case they would still have to repay what they borrowed. So it's not something somebody's gonna do, just because it's hard.
Yeah. And I know this, to quote, I know this was Andreas and Dopoulos actually brought this up in another, in years ago, I think, as it talks about blockchains in general, but wouldn't someone who gets all of that just want to stake that ETH and get the rewards? At a certain extent, if you're able to bring that much ETH to bear, the much easier thing to do is just stake that ETH and get the rewards. So in some ways, the economic disincentive of, if I do this and then I would potentially still lose, have a very high probability of still losing that, it's just not worth it, right? You should just secure the chain.
Yeah, that's how I would view it too. It wouldn't be worth it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just if you were able to bring that much to bear, you might as well just stake it and get incredible, get those rewards and participate in the system. Cool. Great. First off, we've always had great questions, but people have really been paying attention. I love it. Thank you for being on this journey with us. It's just, there's a lot that goes into these workshops. So when we see people show up and ask such great questions, it's really heartwarming. This is great. Okay, we're gonna take another like 9 minutes of questions, and then we'll sort of take one big last question to do wrap-ups. Okay, great questions. Sorry, there's the September 6th upgraded Bellatrix. Great question. Like, so what's happening is that all folks who are running nodes are participating as in various ways, but where they're running some sort of client software, they need to upgrade by September 6th their software so that they can participate in the merge. So they need to go ahead and do that. That's where that September 6th date comes from. You're seeing all the releases having been cut like this week. They've come out. I think a bunch came out yesterday. There might be some coming out today. That also gives time in case there's like something in those releases that there needs to be a bug fix. There can be a re-release, but that's why you know, those releases are coming out. You want to do that upgrade by the 6th so that you're prepared. It gives sort of a buffer because it, you know, before the merge happens to have everything up and running. So that's where the September 6th date comes from. Great question. Okay. How ordinary ETH holders can participate in staking ETH and play the role of a validator? Is there any pool like what we have in other projects nowadays? I would direct you to the Ethereum Foundation's website. And they have a great section on staking. And I believe they share some useful resources on the different ways that someone can stake if you're not doing like institutional staking or things like that. I think as Kuhan, who was our guest in week 5, said, you know, codify staking is staking, but like it is aimed, and I think you see that in the website, like towards institutions. So there's certain things that you have to do. So if you're just an individual, you know, there is some information on staking, and I think it talks about solo home staking, staking as a service, pooled staking. It even does discuss like exchanges that do staking, and it gets into those details and gives you links. So I think that should be helpful and useful for you, and share some knowledge. Good question. Okay. So great. Another great question. How does the merge affect decentralization, considering the fact that it'll be moving from proof of work to proof of stake? Hence, the number of validators might in most cases be finite based off of, I'm assuming, the amount of ETH, and a validator might be kicked out whenever the network deems fit. I guess what you're saying is like whenever there is like sort of a slashing condition that would create the reason for slashing a validator, and then they might drop offline. I'm interpreting the question a little bit, so if that's not what you meant, please drop it in. The reality is, though, with specialized hardware for mining, like even though you're saying like there is finite amount of ETH, like there's still finite resources to be able to create the sort of specialized mining hardware and the ability for individuals to acquire that. Like that is not, you know, infinite resources either. And so with the move to proof of stake, it is becoming like more decentralized. It is like progressively moving the ability to participate in securing the network to a more decentralized state. And so while I think the contention there is that like, oh, well, because there would be the ability, because it's not based off of needing to stake ETH, like anyone who could get the necessary computing power could do it. But I think as what we've seen is sort of with the various issues related to supply chains that even existed before the pandemic, like that's just not possible for people to be able to actually get those proof of work mining resources.
Yeah, I see that too. Yeah, I would say like it's harder to get computing resources than it is to participate in a staking pool. Like you have to have that much ETH to participate in the staking pool.
Yeah, great point, Jackie. So great question. I think it's a very worthwhile question, and that is our answer. How will the Ethereum Foundation give community guaranteed after Shanghai? I would just say participate in the community calls. Like we've highlighted that. We've talked about some of the community calls. Participate in the community calls. The biggest part of Ethereum that gets me excited every day is the convergence of technology and people. And so anyone can participate in these community calls. They're open. You're allowed to join them. Join those community calls. That would be my number one piece of advice. Okay. I think we've gotten through. Okay, one more, and then we'll do the big one. What wallets and marketplaces should do for the merge? Wallets and marketplaces, pretty much same thing of the dApp developer considerations that we put out. Make sure you're on the relevant testnet. So if you're using Rinkeby, Robson, or Kovan, switch over to Gurley. Make sure that you're, the method calls that you're using. Jackie called this out. Like, just make sure that you're staying up to date with how the JSON RPC spec is changing. Everything we said about pseudo randomness, being aware that like block time, block creation is shorter now. It's 12 seconds every time instead of this sort of 12 to 14 second range that it could be. The dApp developer considerations are good things for wallets and marketplaces to consider. So that article that Jackie linked would be a great article for wallets and marketplaces to read. All right. So the big question, and this was just super useful that this came in because we were planning on doing this anyway. So, but we'll give you credit. We'll say this, was the question that made us answer this. We have done now this series. So we're going to go around to each member and have them share something that they've learned. Maybe it's about what the future of Web3 is. Maybe it's a key thing that they thought was really an interesting insight. But we're going to go around with these last 12 minutes and go just sort of give like our high level, here's something that I want to share. So I think, Jackie, if you're okay with it, you're our guest. We're having you on. If you want to lead it off, so you get sort of your pick of anything that you want to share, highlight, call out, can literally be anything. But after, all this that we've been through, we're on the precipice of the merge. The floor is yours.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing that stood out for me from this series was learning about MEV and MEV boost and what that looks like before the merge and after the merge. It took me down a rabbit hole of reading about sandwich attacks and NFT sniping and all that really interesting stuff that is just goes to show how creative people can get when there's when there's tools to do stuff like that. That's honestly, that was one of my favorite things about this series, was learning about MEV, because before that it was really mystified for me. So that demystified it.
Cool. And Gagan led that session back in week 3, actually. So Gagan, your name has been invoked. You are next. Is there anything that you want to share, highlight, or call out as part of this series?
Yeah, I'm a new person to the Infura team, been here 2.5 months, and I think my favorite part of the series has just been seeing the questions that are coming in and reading the feedback which the participants are giving in the survey. It's made me realize, I think, how vibrant and engaged the community really is, and that Infura and consensus play a really important part in not just providing tools but also helping educate the community. So personally, I think that's been really gratifying. Over the last 7 weeks, I think we've done a lot of different things, but It's been really interesting having, I was trying to count, and I think we've had like 5 special guests come in from different parts of Consensus and talk about different things, right? Anywhere from, if you're a dApp developer, how can you make sure your dApp is going to continue to work post-merge, to MEV, as Jackie mentioned. Um, but the one which really stands out in my mind was Michael Wooler, Impura co-founder, coming in and talking about his solo staking journey. And I think I was trying to rationalize why all the sessions were great, but somehow that one really, I sort of related to it. I could sort of see myself, I'm not a solo staker, but I could see myself going through that same experience Michael did. And sort of just found that one to be fascinating and super engaging. I think all of them are great. I think Tom has mentioned this a few times. The recordings are up on Crowdcast. If you missed any of these, please do check it out. The blog's going to have links to the direct ones. But yeah, it's been it's been really great being a part of this journey with everybody here. So thank you. And cool. Should I pick somebody? I think Tariq. Yeah. Tariq, I'll pick on you.
All right, I heard my name. I'll say for me, the one thing that I really did love about this entire series of workshops that we did was the spirit of community, right? And I think that is the future of Web3, the spirit of community. We were able to come together, grassroots organize, and spearhead this event all for the community in service to make sure that we're pointing everybody to the right direction. We're giving people the information that they need, and we're demystifying misinformation. As we've sort of noticed through the research results, the fears that were existent in our first workshop actually kind of shifted to being more confident and optimistic about the merge. And that's a direct result of attending these community events, which goes to show that you don't have to search outside of the community to get the information that you need. And I think that's a really, really powerful message, not just for the Ethereum ecosystem, but for all of Web3 as we continue to move forward and gain more mass adoption throughout the world. I absolutely love collaborating with everybody here. As Tom said, you guys have no idea the amount of work and effort that has went into organizing these events, not just on Crowdcast, but also recapping on our Twitter spaces. So all of that, cross-functional collaboration with different people throughout the organization, and also literally using the insights that we capture from the survey results each week to make sure that we are catering to your needs and we're curating the content before each community call has been really, really powerful, and also really empowering too. Just knowing that we're helping and we're servicing the community to make sure that you guys are ready for the merge, whether if you're a solo staker or a general network participant. These were all efforts in the spirit of community, in the spirit of doing good for the community, and also knowing that the community is going to be the number one source for information as we continue to move forward. So I think for me, just being able to help and serve people was the number one key takeaway for me. And seeing the amount of engagement that we've continued to get over the workshops has been absolutely phenomenal. That really goes to show that people are listening, people are paying attention, and we are doing our jobs. I'm an information nerd by trade, so I absolutely love disseminating information and pointing people to the right resources. So, this was really just history in the making. This is going to be something that anybody can go on YouTube to sort of watch and recap to learn about the history of Ethereum as it moves closer to the merge. So I think those are pretty much my key takeaways.
Cool. Thanks.
Now pass it to Darina.
Thank you, team. Yeah, everything that everyone said here on this platform has been beautiful. And I totally agree I feel like the two things that really stand out for me is really the consistency. Everyone, each and every one that attended the Crowdcast workshops, 7 of them now, it's been consistent throughout, and we really appreciate that. And the other one is community, which everyone has really said here, and that really is something that we bring to the table, and being able to be that source of truth for walking everyone through, again, the history and the making that Terry talked about. We're all going to be a part of history. We're all here. And this team has worked so hard to be able to provide all the information, the resources, and being able to walk anyone through how to prepare for the merge. The session that actually I can go back to is where we're at and where we're going. That was the first session where we talked about what we were going to do throughout the sessions that we were going to hold in the future. And I can't believe we're here now. This is our last one, and this was an encore, really, because we were back by popular demand and we weren't able to cover everything. But I'm so happy that everyone's been part of this journey, from the consensus team, as well as everyone that's been a part of our community. And we really appreciate the engagement and all of you being here to support us, and for you to trust us to support you.
Thank you, Dorina. Great insights and recap from everyone. So the last part I'll add is like, while this sort of live conversation week to week is going to end, we do have a few ways for you to stay engaged. One is I'm dropping in an invite to our Discord, and that's specifically, that invite will, once you verify, it'll bring you to the Infura merge, just the merge channel, which is a consensus level merge channel, is a place that I hang out and post information related to the merge. So as everyone kind of mentioned, either directly or indirectly, community is a big part of this space. That is where our community at the consensus level lives, and you can interact with other teams there as well in that consensus Discord. And the final thing that I'll say is, like, if you enjoy participating in this manner, Ethereum is a great place for you long term, because this is how Ethereum operates. We are a community first technology that is intent on working with people to build something that is incredible. So from events that are online hosted by organizations like us, or to in-person events hosted by the community, find ways to get involved, join your local meetup groups, join for events like these. This is a community that embraces people participating. It's driven by people participating. You can be an active participant. So I encourage you, if you've been participating all along, thank you for participating. If you're just thinking about getting started or want to deepen your participation, now is a great time to do so. So with that, we'll sign off for the last time in this series. We'll probably be back with more information at some point, probably in the September community call. They'll probably pull us on stage and we'll just say hi and stuff. But thank you all. This has been a great series, and we will see you at the merge.